I started my career at Prudential, so I've had the internal experience of having to sell my ideas, get others on board with what it is that I wanted to do, as well as engage with others in terms of reaching their goals and outcomes. I've had my own business now for many, many years. I sit on the executive board here at the Brooklyn Chamber. So I also have the experience of having to market a business and get others engaged. There are three things that I've learned definitively. Three things I know for sure about promoting your ideas or your business. Number one is establishing value. And one of my mentors said to me, and reminds me often, the first sale is to yourself. So number one, what is my value that I have to offer? And to be clear about what that is and to be able to articulate that simply and succinctly. Number two, who are the audiences, who are the people, who are the markets that want or need the value that I offer? Number one, what is the value that I offer? Number two, who are the audiences that need that value? Now, if there are no audiences that need the value and I think it's great, then I'm selling to myself. And you know how that will turn out. And number three is once I've established what value I have to offer, who wants or needs the value that I'm offering, then how am I going to let those folks know that I have that value available? So number one, establishing value. Number two, who is the audience or audiences that need that value? And number three, how will I reach them to let them know? So today we're talking about the nonprofit world, the nonprofit landscape. And when we talked about, when we were preparing for you, we thought about the nonprofit world in terms of promoting your business and your audiences in three particular ways. Number one, are you attracting people to the services that you're providing? Number two, are you attracting the donors and the funders that you need to support your business? And number three, some of you may be in the business of influencing policy. So that's how we started to think about the context for you today. The other thing that I just want to clarify in terms of how we're thinking about promotion. Promotion in terms of marketing, what are your services, how do you get them out there? And number two, public relations, and what is the difference? So we'll make that distinction for you today. We've got three expert panelists. They each will share some thoughts with you for 5 to 7 minutes. And then we will come back. I have some prepared questions, and we have a real opportunity because we have an intimate group. We really want to hear from you. So our goal is to provide as much value for you this morning as possible. So we want to create as much time to do that. Okay, so that's how this is going to go. Without further delay, I want to introduce our first panelist and speaker, Debra Dixon. Debra is the founder and CEO of Light of Gold PR, Marketing and Consulting. It is a minority and woman-owned business enterprise that's headquartered here in New York City with a satellite office in Atlanta, Georgia. This is a 10-year-old, 7-person boutique firm, and she specializes in surpassing client goals of public relations, media campaigns, web design, business development, and events, helping her clients to reach their strategic goals. Debra sets herself apart based using technology, digital media, and social media in her strategies. She and Light of Gold have successfully launched the Staying True to Your Brand program. That is a package of books and webinars and trainings and so forth that she's launching in other cities around the country. And she hosts a monthly Gold Business Networking event. Please welcome Debra Dixon. And Debra is going to start us off by setting context around branding.
I am the founder of Light of Gold PR and Marketing. One of the things that I found about 3 to 5 years ago when I was doing marketing for small to medium-sized businesses and nonprofits was once we got them a lot of engagement and traction in the market, something interesting started to happen. When we got them to their target market wasn't necessarily always buying from them. And we couldn't figure out exactly why until we realized all the branding issues that our clients had. And so think about it. If you see someone dressed 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 different ways, coming to the same party, the same event, it kind of breeds a little bit of distrust. You don't know what's going to turn up next. So what we found that we had to do was to start doing brand management, basically looking at the messaging that was on the website, the messaging that was on the collateral or the brochures or the postcards, the business cards, looking at the company internally to see if the team, the people that worked within the organization, were they articulating the same messaging? Were they talking about the products in the same way? Or were they saying different things? So we found that to be a significant issue. I would say 3 to 4 years ago, we didn't even do anything with branding, but now it's a significant part of our business because we know that we can't get the proper traction for our clients if they're articulating incorrect and inconsistent messaging. And so what does that mean? I'll give you an example. We work on content, for instance, for a website for a nonprofit. And we work on the content, we're giving the information from the nonprofit, and unfortunately they're giving us dated information. We have put that dated information on the website. That dated information is also on the brochure. So guess what? You have people calling this organization wanting to know, do you work on this? Can you work on this for me? Is this one of your services? Because I have someone that needs this. And then what do they say on the phone? Oh, we stopped doing that years ago. Well, why is it on your website? And this is the kind of played out for us time and time again with the tiniest nonprofit, whether it's a 1 or 2 person firm, and of course this means the same for small to medium-sized businesses as well, and larger businesses, to the largest organization. We found that to be an ongoing theme and issue. So I think it's really important to make sure that across the board, your brand looks the same, it feels the same. It's not just about the colors and the logo. A lot of people think it's just about that. It's deeper than that. It's also how do you describe your services. And I think there's something, if there's anything that you could take away today also, think about if your messaging and the content in all of your material, are you selling to yourself or are you selling to your target market? And so what you have to do is find out how would your target market find you based on how they articulate your services. And so that's one of the things that we do in our company is make sure the target market is being spoken to and that you're not just speaking to yourself.
Great. Thanks, Debra. Next, we have Danielle Sear. And Danielle is the Vice President of Integrated Marketing for Co-Communications, which is a full-service marketing and public relations agencies with offices here in New York City, Westchester, and Connecticut. Danielle joined the agency in 2008 and has worked extensively with nonprofits developing their public relations strategy, as well as marketing campaigns towards strategic goals. Danielle is a member of the Connecticut Association of Nonprofits, where she's led various training and workshops to the nonprofit market on strategic communications and social media marketing. Danielle is a 40 under 40 winner, and she's board president for the Connecticut Valley chapter of the Public Relations Society of America. Danielle's going to talk to us about public relations. Please welcome Danielle Sear.
So can everybody hear me? Okay. Well, thanks to everyone for being here this morning. As an agency, we're really passionate about helping nonprofits to achieve their goals, and we work with a wide range of organizations ranging from health and human services nonprofits to organizations that are really focused on legislative advocacy and action. And so from a public relations standpoint, I just want to take you through some of like the best practices that we advise clients on that are really important as you work to execute a public relations program that is moving the needle for your organization. We realize in many organizations the communications person often really wears a lot of hats, and so you're the development person, admin person, and you have all these other responsibilities, and so it's really important that you're getting the return out of the activities that you're doing so that you can justify to the organization and say this is an important and meaningful part of our budget and it is helping to move the organization forward. So the first of those areas really for us is strategic alignment. Oftentimes you'll hear organizations talk about their marketing goals, their public relations goals. What do they want to get out of an ad campaign? What do they want to get out of the visibility they're getting from a corporate partnership? But at the end of the day, the question is, how is this helping to achieve the 3, 4, 5 main strategic goals that we have in our organization's plan? And how are we going to make sure that we can measure what we're doing, that our media relations campaigns are targeted, that we're reaching the right people, that, as Debra mentioned, the messaging is consistent, that it upholds the brand standards, that it's updated, and that we're really able to say, you know what, we did 3 key public relations campaigns this year, and they were around 2 major events, and one was focused around a new program we launched, and you know, this is the media traffic we got. These are the people who said, oh, I saw the story, I want to volunteer with your program. So really having that internal tracking mechanism that says, this didn't just happen from the 10 or 12 things we're doing to promote this program we have. This is the direct result of our presence at a community event, the direct result of a fundraising campaign, the direct result of social media, of media relations. So having those metrics to measure that strategic alignment is really critical. The other thing is on the audience side. As Lisa mentioned in her introduction for the panel, knowing your audience is critically important. The way you talk to a key funder from a foundation who gives you grant funding every year is very different from that individual donor who has a real deep personal connection to your cause. Same can be said for media. No 2 reporters look alike. It doesn't matter if their beats are the same. Doesn't matter if it's the quarterly nonprofit magazine of the member association in 2 different markets. They're not identical, and really understanding the nuances of those audiences is critical. One of the things we often recommend to organizations is to take the time to do some stakeholder research at the onset of the campaign and to have some data to inform the strategy. Very often, people will, not be shy about saying, you know what, I get too many communications from you. It's just too much. I can't cull through all the content. Or they'll even say, I'd really love to know more about this program. This is really key for organizations that have a lot of different programs and serve a lot of different audiences. I often hear from nonprofits that they do 10, 12, 14 programs, and people have these long-standing and deep associations with the roots of the organization, which may have been 1 or 2 core programs. And so using that data, something as simple as an electronic survey that says, is the frequency of communications appropriate? What channels do you want to be communicated with through? Would you share information from our organization on social media if it was relevant? If so, what platforms? And then always have that golden audience question, what else should we know? What else is important to you? That's where you get some of the best insights. Those verbatims from those open response questions are really golden to informing your strategy and making sure that you are communicating in an audience-centric and authentic way. The other thing we like to look at is ramping up the news value. So everybody has a major fundraiser. We're going into the season where nearly every organization has a golf tournament coming up. So what makes yours different? What is the who cares? How does it pass the who cares test? Why should a reporter come and cover the keynote at your gala? Well, how is the money going to be used? A lot of times you have to think about drawing that full story picture for the reporter. And we realize in some instances this gets into issues of client confidentiality, and that not everybody has, a wide range of clients who are willing to talk about their experiences with the organization. There's some very sensitive issues that nonprofits deal with, and that transparency can be a challenge. But in the situations where you do have that client who has said, I'm happy to talk to media, I'm happy to be profiled, happy to be a success story for your organization, leverage those. That's how you draw the story full circle. You have the organization, you have your internal perspective, you have the perspective of the person who's directly impacted. And then in many instances, they'll even pull in talking to a funder to say, why does your organization support this program? there's certainly no lack of nonprofits to choose from when it comes to where to allocate individual or grant funding. So how can you draw that story full circle and really ramp up the news value? The other point, tying back to my earlier point about strategic alignment, the benchmarks. It's great to have really ambitious goals for your capital campaign. It's great to want to become the go-to source for media and to be the person that they call on when they need someone to provide a nonprofit perspective, an industry-specific perspective, or just to be the local voice of the business or nonprofit community on an issue. But how are you going to benchmark those successes? We always say we're gone are the days of the 5-year marketing plan. I think we all wish they were here, but they're gone. And so what can you do to make sure your strategy is nimble, that it's research informed, and that you can adapt it? So that if a story breaks and you can provide expert commentary to round out that story, you are able to reallocate resources and refine your approach to take advantage of that timely opportunity. And on that point, for those who are familiar with David Meerman Scott, he talks a lot about newsjacking. So inserting yourself into the news cycle. As PR people, as people who are communicating on behalf of a nonprofit, you have to create your own news opportunities. You're not going to be lucky enough that every time there's just a natural insertion into the news cycle. So what can you do to build out those opportunities and to ensure your strategy will allow you to both create opportunities and insert yourself into ready-made ones?
Terrific. Thanks, Danielle. And last but not least, bringing is Joey Cummings. And Joey is the CEO and Chief Strategic and Creative Officer of the Joey Company. And Joey Cummings has been recognized by Advertising Age as one of the 100 best and brightest, by Adweek as a creative all-star, and by Fortune magazine as a person to watch. Joey spent the first part of her career working for huge global agencies like DDB, Saatchi & Saatchi, and Leo Burnett. In 1998, she left the corporate world, starting her own agency, the Joey Company, which is a fully integrated marketing agency located right here in Dumbo. Joey's agency has been recognized by Adweek as the advertising world's best-kept secret, but now the secret is out. Her work has won the coveted Effie Award for creativity and effectiveness, and her agency is repeatedly written up in the New York Times for groundbreaking, brand-building work that her agency does for clients. Please welcome Joey Cummings.
Let me start with the word shy. My good friends know that I am, but when you're running a company, you can't be. So there's a certain fire that you have to create in yourself about what you're doing that gets the shy you out of the way. Slide number 1. Websites are important. Very important that you build one. The first one I built was 2 pages. Don't feel like you have to figure it all out in the beginning, but it makes you feel very legitimate when people go online and they see that you have an organization. So a website's an important thing to have. Slide number 2. One of the most important things that I can tell you is you have to figure out what your story is. What do you stand for? And it isn't just, I make ads, or I create great PR, or I really know how to take my clients forward and create branding. What is it that you really believe in that's a part of who you are that is really true? Somebody asked me 3.5 years ago, what is it that you feel like makes your work different? And I said, we see what others fail to see. It's actually become our positioning statement. And it's not something that was written or made up. It's something that I really truly believe I was taught to do in the business. So figure out what it is that you stand for, something that's very emotional to you, and something that's really true. Third slide. There's a lot of homework to creating your story. This happens to be a document that we use that we give all of our clients. And although we do a lot of work for outside of the not-for-profit, I actually think many of the things that we do are more important in the for-profit area because it's so important that you aren't just talking, as my colleagues here have said, to yourself, but you're really telling a story that other people can get engaged in. So There are questions that you need to ask. Who are your competition? Who are your target audiences? What are the features of what you offer, the tangible benefits, the emotional benefit? What is the personality of the company, the not-for-profit that you are creating? What is its core essence? And then you can figure out at the top what is your unique selling proposition or positioning. Slide number 4. Your work. Make sure that you are archiving and creating the stories around the work that you're doing, because you really want to tell those stories. It's really, really important that people know that. I would also say, pick your clients very well. It's really important that you think about who you choose to work with, because they will, in many ways, shape the character of your company. You can put the last slide up, which is the first slide. Creating a personality is really important. So it's done based on things that you love. It's done based on the people that you choose inside of your organization. So think also very, very hard about the people that you surround yourself with in your organization. They should be like-minded, like-valued people, and help create the energy that you're trying to create in the world as well.
Terrific. Thanks, Joey. So you've got some context here in terms of laying out your strategy from a branding standpoint. Who are you? Public relations, what's your news story? And positioning. I've got a couple questions, and then I want to open it up to the audience. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, the list continues to grow. We can't have this conversation without asking about social and digital media. First of all, many people think that by engaging in social media, they're doing digital marketing. Can you speak to the difference between digital marketing, social media, and why it's important to make the distinction?
So I think a lot of times what we run into is the perception that social media marketing is a strategy in and of itself. And at the end of the day, it's not. It's one tool that you can leverage to get you where you need to be. And is it an important part of the toolkit? Yes. Are there a number of organizations that have great success leveraging social media? Undoubtedly. In the same token, there are a number of organizations for whom the risk of letting go and giving up a little bit of control and having that free-form conversation is a serious brand risk. It's an organizational risk, and it's something that can jeopardize their relationship with clients and sensitive populations. So to that point, digital marketing strategy is all of your online communications, and you need to understand what aspects of digital marketing you can leverage, how you're going to measure the success, and how your message, how your branding can be translated across those platforms in a way that's authentic while ensuring that you're reaching the right audiences. And I think the thing to remember is that digital marketing gives us access to measurement metrics that we've never had as marketers. And it's an incredible opportunity to really be able to prove the return on the investment and on the engagement.
Good. On a follow-up to that, and you touched on it a bit, Danielle, what would you say to any of the panelists, what are the biggest shifts in thinking that nonprofits have to make in today's world of marketing? Danielle, you mentioned alluded to that the 5-year marketing plan has gone away. I'm not going to ask how many in the audience believe that to be true, but let's just go with that assumption for now. That would be an element, for example, in shifting, or an example of shifting the thinking. What are the ways in which nonprofits need to change how they think about marketing and public relations to be effective in today's world?
I'd like to answer that. I think one of the changes I'd like to see a lot of nonprofits make is really paying close attention to their processes and their infrastructure. I think with a lot of nonprofits, if you're working with volunteers or you're changing staff, or maybe you don't have the same funding that you had before and now you're having to let people go, if you have some good infrastructure and processes in place, you can react a little bit better. But if you're more dependent on the people that were part of your organization and they go away, then all of a sudden a part of your strategy goes away because that person's no longer serving in that capacity. So I think paying attention to the new tools, whether it's technology tools that can be implemented, and using that to support your organization so that when you don't have the same, the ship kind of shrinks in size, you now can use some tools to kind of help you in those areas. And then I think staying compliant with what your donors and the people who are actually helping your organization stay afloat, making sure they're getting their return on investment. We have to look at it, and I'm sure a lot of you who work with corporations and companies, you have to look at a return on investment. And even though it's with a cause, you have to still look at that. So I think with nonprofits, that shift in thinking toward, what can we give back to our donors and the people who are funding us so that they get a return on investment as well.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a word person, and so I think probably the first reaction I have, we've done a lot of work with the CDC, we're working with the University of Michigan School of Public Health, so we've had a lot of experience in this area. Is not-for-profit feels apologetic to me. I love somebody earlier talked about value. We do a lot of work, as you saw, for major national advertisers all across the world, and some of the most exciting work that's being done is done in this sector. I would argue that it's for profit in a large way, for the profit of mankind, for the profit of humanity, for the profit of children, for the profit of community. So I think that at least internally, unless somebody's going to change the language in this area, that's something that you really need to embody in what you're doing. The other thing I would say from a marketing standpoint is I think you have to really learn, particularly in your communications, to focus and not get tangled up in 500 sheets of paper that are trying to explain what you do. Figure out what that is, make it sticky, and make it short.
Terrific. Thanks. Any questions? Let's stop now. I think this is a good time. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so my question is, with so limited budget and probably experience in PR and marketing, and I just heard what you said, all three of you, it's so valuable in creating brand and creating knowledge about our school and reaching these groups. What you would recommend to start with is a minimum, I would say, to get started and then to grow our school in the world, I would say.
So the question is, when you're just starting out and you're small and you have a limited budget, what are the minimum? What's the bare minimum?
Yeah, what you would recommend to start with?
So certainly the first place that I would recommend starting is your messaging. Your messaging is an investment that's going to carry you across whatever communication channels you choose to put in your toolkit, and it's something that you need to be sure you're reinforcing across all of these different channels and to all of these different audiences. So certainly the refining the message and understanding which messages are most salient with most audiences is your starting point. The nice thing about the earned media side of things, so the public relations work, is that content can really fuel a number of initiatives. So you can take, the story that you pitch to a reporter or put in a news release from a milestone or your launch announcement, and that can become a blog post talking about, your personal history and why you chose to found this organization and what the goals of the organization are. That's also more content that you're putting on your website, which ensures that that's an up-to-date and accurate marketing tool and reflects your value of your organization. So really, it's about identifying the content that you can build out around the messaging that you can repackage and repurpose without diluting it. So I think that's always an important distinction. You're not going to take the same content and put it in 20 different places just to have a broader presence. You need to understand the nuances of refining the message and refining the content to suit the platform and where that content is best suited. But certainly the messaging is really your right out the gate investment.
Terrific. Thanks. Anything else to add, panelists?
Well, I definitely would agree with Danielle with the messaging, but also the branding around it, whatever logo, colors, everything that you're going to use with the content or with the messaging is important, because you can replicate it and repurpose it in a lot of different channels, but you have to make sure you're clear about your initiatives, everything. So it still goes back to your mission and making sure your content is explaining what that mission is, so that it can with digital, it can really take legs. And that's the good thing about digital, is once you put it out there, is great. However, from a crisis and reputation management standpoint, you have to make sure that content is what you want to send out there. So definitely content and branding will probably be some good areas to start.
There's something to me that is very, very important. I started my company in my living room, and that didn't last for about 2 months because I didn't like living and working in the same place. So I got a teeny weeny little place in Chelsea, like 100 square feet. I think that the space that you start your place in is very important. That it is a space that you are consciously creating an environment. I had a green chair and a yellow desk, and that was it. But it's something about anchoring yourself with your space as well. The other items will come, but it makes you feel a certain realness because you've committed just to that tangible thing that you live in every day.
Good. Yes, sir.
Variety, we have a celebrity endorsement now, and we're starting to finally get a little bit well known. What is your opinion on the best way for us to leverage that and to keep the momentum going? Because we don't have any PR or marketing at this point. It's just been us hustling and talking about it and blowing up social media and all that. So what's a good professional next step for us to do?
So leveraging celebrities comes with a unique set of challenges and a great deal of opportunities for your brand. Certainly from a crisis and brand monitoring standpoint, it inherits a whole heck of a lot of responsibility in terms of what may lie ahead. But the thing to think about is that there's no one right way to leverage a celebrity endorsement or relationship. It has to be authentic to your organization. It has to be reflective of the relationship that your organization has to that person, whether it's a personal connection that they're on board or however, the roots of the relationship really matter. One thing that I'm finding really interesting, sort of as people are leveraging their brand ambassadors, be they celebrity or just other folks who are prominent in various industries, is that there's a real opportunity with this multimedia content to make it a very broad-reaching engagement. There is, on the for-profit side, and I really do believe that nonprofits can learn a lot from for-profits. The ideas are not industry exclusive, and so there's a lot to be learned from looking at the success of other industries, even if they are, for-profit entities. One company that I really admire for how they do it is called Tommy Copper, and they actually make copper-infused athletic apparel. And what they've done is they've gone and found brand ambassadors, some of whom are of a celebrity scale, so former Olympians, really prominent athletes, and others whom are more reflective of the demographics of their target audiences, so that they have that, celebrity or high power endorsement for each of those markets. They go into those people's businesses. They get authentic footage of what their day-to-day looks like. They then tie it back to their brand messaging and what the connection is so that people can understand not just your organization-centric, but their business-centric side of things and tie that circle together. They do a tremendous job of that, and I think that it's a really great example of how you can take the different nuances of those relationships and really leverage them. So I think the first thing to understand is what is the relationship, what is the messaging around it, and what is authentic to your brand in terms of leveraging it.
I just want to take a moment here and step back. We're using the word branding a lot, and I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page about what that means. From a very simple, and panelists correct me if I'm wrong here, from a very simple standpoint, branding is what is the promise that your company is making? What can I expect from your company? Coke is one of the most valuable brands in the world. No matter where you go in the world, you know what you will get if you buy a bottle of Coke. So the question becomes, no matter who comes to you, and Debra talked about this in terms of identity, who will they get? Will they get someone who's environmentally focused? Will they get someone who's focused on young people? Will they get someone who's focused on, you fill in the blank. But what is the promise that your brand is offering to your clients, the clients you serve, your donors, your funders, and others? Does that...
Yeah, the only other thing I'd add is it's not necessarily a set of words. Apple, I mean, they've changed their set of words a million times, but Apple is just cool innovation, right? Four Seasons, who knows what they stand for, but it's a high exceptional level of hospitality. That's why I said your space is important, because it represents something as well.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned the Four Seasons. At one time,
Right.
the Four Seasons, no matter where you went, you knew you would get a
Right.
5-star experience.
Right.
Now, we're not sure what the promise is.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I think also to keep in mind on a very elemental, just a small level, is also how you show up at events like this. Are you friendly? Are you pleasant? How do you answer the phone? How does your team answer the phone? All of that goes into your brand as well. I always feel that branding and rebranding and reinvention is an inside job. It's like you go inside to find out what your core mission is, what is it that you want to offer, but then it affects all these other elements as well. And I think it's important for you to be mindful, whoever you're partnering with, whoever you're working with, whether you're hiring people or working with interns, however you're doing it, that everybody can speak and articulate the brand the same way with a similar type of energy, because all of this represents what your brand is as well.
Good. Any other questions from, yes, sir? Right. I beg your pardon?
He's loud.
Okay, fine. How do you find that these strategies transfer in the same way? You know, I feel like I'm sitting in a room full of foundations and arts organizations and things like that, but from a service provision standpoint, do you find that these strategies also transfer when you are obviously working on a much more fixed budget and there's a lot less room for innovation when you have so many of the strictures that come with, say, running a senior center or something of that nature?
I think strategy is even more important when you've got more limitations, because you know it makes you do the really hard intellectual homework to figure out exactly what it is that you're offering and how you want to articulate that, as opposed to just sort of flopping in the wind. You know, strategy is very, very important always, but when you have a limited budget and you have a limited capability, it's even more important, I would say.
Yeah, I agree. It's more important now when you're small, because as you grow, you want to kind of figure out and, you know, hammer out whatever mistakes and anything that happens on a small level, because the problem that happens is as you grow, those problems grow, because now you're adding more people to it. So it's better to kind of work on a lot of this stuff now when you're small. I think this is when it's the most important.
And I'd like to just add something to and challenge the idea that if you're small, and I'm assuming in the subtext there is we have limited resources, that you have less room for innovation. I really want to challenge that idea. You know, necessity is the mother of invention, which is just innovation at a very, very basic level. And I would suggest that innovation is not tied to resources and money, but it's really just creativity applied.
Yeah,
Because creativity
absolutely.
with no practical application is interesting, or cool or fun, but creativity applied is innovation. And that's what changes landscapes, changes lives, changes policy. So looking from that standpoint, I would encourage you to kind of think more broadly or differently about that idea. The other thing that you raised is who's in the room, which just by a show of hands, how many of you are with a foundation or a large nonprofit? Well, with a foundation. Okay. How many of you are with, say, a community-based organization? Okay, so by and large, the folks in here are smaller and growing, or startups, or some startups. The other thing I'd just like to say about strategy, because that's one of the words that gets thrown around a lot, and I think it's kind of lost some of its meaning. Very simply put, strategy simply says, what's the outcome that we are producing? So you mentioned the senior center. There's so many different directions that you can go. Joey mentioned focus. Are we providing meals? Are we providing companionship? Are we providing basic services and dressing and so forth? Are we providing a social outlet? It could be any one of those or any combination, but when the resources are limited, in my opinion, that's the time to even get more narrow and more focused, which ultimately allows you to have more impact, which helps build your brand, which exposes you to greater number of resources. So it feels counterintuitive to go smaller and more focused, but in the end, it can help you to really grow.
Yeah, I think the other thing, and I love what you said, because I was thinking the gift of the beginning is that you have time to dream. I think that's really true. But I think the other thing that's like really important is to make sure that you're constantly looking at trends and what's going on in the world. 60 Minutes in the last 2 weeks had a program about the fastest growing demographic is 90 plus, which means 60 is the new 30, which means that senior is the wrong word for that age group anymore. So make sure that you're continuing to look at what's going on in the world constantly, because it can help you get excited about what you're doing and question whether or not you need to redefine it a little bit.
Good. Any other questions from there? Yes, sir. Okay, we have two here. We've got about another 7 minutes, so we're good.
So I was just wondering if you have any advice for approaching the news media if you don't have a history or relationship with the media in the market.
Absolutely, and that's a really good point that you bring up. I think that there is this sort of unfair perception that the relationships are what get you the results at the end of the day, and by no means am I downplaying the importance of having strong relationships with the media, but at the end of the day, you can have the best relationship in the world if you don't have a strong news story. Doesn't matter. What I always find, so we're big advocates of picking up the phone, and I know that some media probably cringe, but you get how many emails a day and then just multiply how many they're getting as the news landscape continues to shrink. But always starting off with, do you have a minute? Very often people will say, no, I'm on deadline, or you have a minute. So be sure you can articulate that value proposition quickly, clearly, and that you can follow up appropriately. The other thing that I find, make sure you've watched their news coverage. Don't take a blind shot. If you watched a segment, if you found it really interesting, if you want to try and dovetail off of something that they already covered to build an opportunity for your organization, make sure that it's not just simple, oh, I love your newscasting, it's wonderful. Make sure that you've got the real value proposition there. I saw your package, I thought this was really interesting. You might be interested to know that the actual impact on this population is X, Y, and Z, and we have data to back this up, and here's the experts. So really making sure that you can tie those pieces together. So I definitely find dovetailing on what they've already done, knowing who you're talking to. There's great tools out there to leverage social media, to our point about digital before, things like Muck Rack that will show you the list of all of the reporters at a media outlet for many outlets, so you direct see recent tweets and everything without having to do some manual searching. Really valuable, seeing what they're talking about, and also knowing a little bit about them. So not in that creepy, I know too much kind of a way, but in that I pay attention and I want to have an authentic relationship with you kind of a way. So for example, if you're talking to a fitness reporter and you know that they're running an upcoming marathon and they've been tweeting about it, tie into that. Once we had a client that was trying to boost business for their sports massages, and I said, Marathon Monday's only 4 days away. How are you unwinding after the big race? There's your story, there's your tie-in, and it's suddenly relevant to this huge population of people running a New York City marathon. So those are my general best practices.
Yeah, I'd like to, I'm sorry, real quickly address just, some small mechanics. The gentleman who talked about the celebrity endorsement as well. just look at making sure a lot of you who are small have a press room or newsroom on your website. If you're going to write your own press release, make sure you're not saying we're the best, we're the most awesome and all, because that's basically advertising copy at this point. You have to be very authentic with what your story is, because these reporters, they don't have the time to just kind of look at a story that's more advertising copy in the shape of a press release. So you have to make sure that you're speaking to their particular outlet and what they cover, and just, one pager type of thing that you send them, and then follow them on Twitter. A lot of reporters and that are on beats, they are also on Twitter. Follow what they're actually putting out there, and kind of see if you can hook into them that way. We've done that, and it's been successful. So that's just something for you, to keep in mind.
Just a quick note also on some of the points that have been made. You can just look up how to write a press release, and there are templates out there for those who are starting small to give you an idea of how to do this.
Google it.
At the same time, I would urge you strongly not to try to do things that are not in your skill set, and to get help. It's worth investing to get the services that are going to yield the results, because otherwise you're spending time that you could be spending towards your core mission. Yes, ma'am, you had a question.
Hi, Michelle Davis with the YWCA of Brooklyn. And my question is, although, first I want to preface by saying, we are part of a larger branding structure, but we all operate independently. And at one point we're, obviously marketing our agency or as a whole, but we also have a community component in which we hold different events, and whether it's a gala or whether it's a social justice event. How does our marketing strategy change when we're marketing these smaller events and not necessarily our gala, which is an annual event, and we're trying to get people out maybe to a panel discussion about a social justice issue, as opposed to coming out to a gala? I know you mentioned that Facebook is one of many tools we would use, and it shouldn't be our only tool, but should we be looking at it, maybe establishing a marketing budget to pay for ads,
So the question is, if it's not a big gala, do you market events differently? And also recognizing that these events are intended to draw different audiences. Is that fair? Mm-hmm.
I don't think your marketing strategy should ever change. Your target changes, so exactly how you adapt to a specific target might change, but I think you want to set a marketing strategy, and you want to be and say and dress in the same way no matter who you're standing in front of. The other thing, we live in a time where there is this egregious wish to be a tsunami. I'd like to
go viral.
I would like to laud the ripple. Think about what you're doing is between here and this room, and do that extraordinarily well, and the rest will follow. I find that this wish to set the world on fire often means that you do not create that really incredible, special foundation that will make you last over time. So I laud the ripple.
Yeah, we're winding down. We've got a couple minutes. Yeah.
I was going to say that I think for what you're trying to do, like you mentioned Facebook and Twitter, and those types of things can work, but I think setting aside a little bit of a marketing budget might help, just so that you're, and working with someone, so that you're clear on, again, like Joey said, your target market is changing. So now your marketing is now localized based on who you want to attend this event and who you want to participate. So it might involve reaching out to local media, or your local chamber, the Brooklyn Chamber, whoever. Sure. And so that's what you kind of have to start thinking about from a strategic standpoint. Now your marketing has changed based on that particular event.
Yeah.
And so,
And I'd just like to add, too, when you talk about a marketing budget, my suspicion is the assumption is money. I'd like to suggest that your marketing budget is also your psychic energy and your intellectual capital.
Absolutely.
I think if more organizations spent time and it doesn't take a lot of time, saying who is the audience. If we're trying to reach the local community, who are we trying to, what do they do? Do they go to church? Do they go to the supermarket? Do they have children? And what do they read? You've got, and in the Brooklyn Chamber, this is a shameless plug, you've got the Brooklyn Buzz, and you've got the Brooklyn Progress. So again, think about your budget beyond just money. It is the talent in your organization, it is the relationships that you have, and spend some time really strategizing, who are we trying to meet, what do they care about, what's the most effective way to reach them, and go from there.
Resources.
Yes. So we are up on our time. I hope this has been a rich conversation for you. We've covered a lot of ground. Strategy, what's the value you're offering, who needs it. In the nonprofit world, you've got multiple audiences, those that you're serving, as well as the funders, as well as the, whether they be individual donors, whether they be organizations, and really think about what's important to them right now. Spend some time building those relationships so that you can get to know who your audience is, and then what are the most effective ways to reach them. You don't have to boil the ocean, you don't have to do them all, but what are the channels? If it's Twitter, if it's Facebook, if it's the local media, I think we underestimate the power of the local media. What are the best channels? Writing, speaking at conferences, reaching your audience. So thank you all for coming. I know that there's some refreshments later on. We'll be around. I wish you all Godspeed and good luck.